Hi everyone, and welcome to the Spencer Lodge podcast, sponsored by our awesome events manager, Najahi Events. Now, on the podcast, every week I try and bring you talented people that have got a story to tell, a message to share, and guess what? We've got someone epic today. Cue the music. So, before we get started, let's make an introduction. It's Adrian Grenier on the show! Yes!
Hello, podcast audience. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much for coming to join us for the short time that you've got while you're here in Dubai.
Yes.
First question.
Yeah.
What's your impression of this place?
Wow. It is quite impressive, I have to say. I didn't know what to expect, to be honest. Seeing magical pictures. It's probably the most Instagrammable city. It's just gorgeous. The sunsets are amazing. The buildings are, I find very elegant and majestic. It's beautiful.
Before you came here in this part of the world, did you have a perception of what it would be like? Like a lot of people do. Before they come here, they're kind of like, oh, it's a bit restricted or a bit conservative, or it's the Middle East, it's close to Iraq and all that kind of stuff, because people do have that impression.
Yeah, of course. I'm also influenced by what is reported, what's told, what we're told, and the fears that people want to put into you to keep you in line. But at the end of the day, when you land somewhere and you meet the people, we all come from the same place, I think, and it really depends on where. Some people are afraid to come to Brooklyn. Yeah. Come to Brooklyn. It's not that scary, I promise.
Good point.
And I was very excited to have this opportunity to open my horizons and really see the people and be a part of the evolving culture that's happening right here.
I always think that no matter where you come from, no matter what your religious background, whatever your race is, we all actually want the same things.
Yeah.
We want to live in safety. We want to have a nice time with our family. We want to give our kids an education, and we want to love our neighbour. Yeah. And I find it really interesting that there's lots of conversation that takes place amongst people to try and fragment that when it just doesn't need to be there. Because no matter, people say religion, you're different. I don't believe you are. I just think you're all the same.
Yeah. Well, I think there are certain people in power that want to create a rivalrous atmosphere as a means to control and maintain power. And we have to be careful not to buy into that and become it as well. So while we're trying to diffuse and dismantle those power structures, we have to make sure that we don't become the thing we most fear. And fear will often build that. So I try and take a deep breath, open my heart, and just be available and know the truth that you say, which is we all want the same thing.
Now, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, okay? Young people starting businesses, wanting to grow and become successful. Whether you're an actor, a singer, a businessman, the fact is you will go out and you pursue a profession. You became extremely famous for a character that you played in a massively successful TV show. Did that success that you got from that mean that and please tell me yes, mean that you had to deal with a lot of rejection along the way?
Well, what do they say? The master has made more mistakes than the student has ever tried. I'm still the student, so I'm still making mistakes. Not the master yet. Yeah, of course. There's it's the name of the game, really. Even if you've reached a certain level in your career, you're still now fighting for the same roles that people who have been around longer or who have more stature than you are also trying to get. So it's a grind, certainly a grind. But what I'm happy to do is let go of that, the ladder, the hamster wheel, trying to always constantly acquire more and be more of successful, and give back a little bit. And that's where I find the balance, is being able to pour my energy into young people and the environment and those that still need support.
While we're on the subject of the environment and not on the subject of acting, what you're doing, I've spent some time trying to understand it, and obviously today we've been at a roundtable discussion. I've learned about what you've been doing, and for someone to take that much of a, people in your position can take that kind of stance. You have that exposure, so you can take a stance and you can work towards something, kind of like peripherally. But to actually get in at the deep end and get stuck in doing what you're doing is quite epic, as far as I'm concerned. How did it come about? Was it from a kid? Were you as a kid worried about that kind of stuff?
My mother raised me to be compassionate and to care about others. And growing up as an only child, I needed to bring people into my circle, chosen family, and I grew up in New York City. So I didn't feel connected to nature. I didn't even understand that I lived on the ocean. New York City is an ocean city.
Yeah.
And in my mind, we're in concrete, that's all. And I think that's the truth for a lot of people, where we have this disconnect. And that was an interesting challenge for me, is how do you get people who are so disconnected from the ocean, for example, care about the ocean? Because whether or not they know it, their actions, what they do, how they consume, affects the ocean. So, this is something that I learned. Is that the oceans, we own the oceans collectively. Barring some, coastal areas, like just off the coast of the oceans, in which certain countries will control that area. The vast majority of the oceans are owned by all of us. They're a common pool resource, which means we have to take ownership and make sure that they're taken care of. And so that, to me, that's the most empowering thing. When
we're getting scared about 70% of the planet is covered by water.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting scared and worried about what's happening to 70% of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
It means that something has to change. Did you know what I mean, though? It means it's not like a small part. This is the majority of the world is covered by the ocean. And if we're getting that kind of build-up of plastic and that kind of problem, then it really is scary, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and we also, I think, need to make systemic change, deep-rooted, real, lasting, fundamental change, because right now there's a wound and we're just trying to put like a Band-Aid on a very deep wound. We need to make sure that we're not just making superficial changes, but we're actually changing who we are as consumers, as what our lifestyle changes are, because that's really how we're going to help the ocean. It's not about going to clean up the ocean. It's about cleaning up ourselves first.
Mm-hmm. And that's always going to be such a huge challenge, with so many different cultures and so many different parts of the world and different belief systems.
Yeah, but that's what our existence is. That's our biggest opportunity, is we get to be alive. How do we want to live? And that's always been what humans have what choices humans have to make for all of time.
Now, you're here in Dubai. You've been fortunate enough to get exposed to some business people that are trying to do something from a sustainable point of view. A few people are making a difference out there, and that's great to see, as we see today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can just get a couple of them on the show just to come and join us for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And let us see what their story is.
Okay,
and by surprise, we've got two guests. Thanks for coming to join us on the show. Okay, and thank you for coming today and putting this together and sharing your story. Adrian and I were just talking about it. The difference that you guys are making has been really enlightening and fantastic. Where does it come from?
Well, it just comes from the need, the necessity. You look around, and I said it before, this has to stop. The way, and we're talking about plastic here, obviously, the way that we consume not only food, but the way that we package that food, and where that goes, most of it, we've heard today from so many people, into the ocean. And it's no point people just keep picking it out if we don't stop putting it back in there.
Fair point. Ian?
I think for us, it's something we feel compelled to do. I mean, this is a problem that's not getting better; it's getting worse, and there's not a lot of thought going into what's this going to look like a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and at some point you have to put your toe in the water and say we're going to do something and make a difference.
When we have our first, have you got children?
I do. No.
Okay, I have kids, and when you have your first child, it's kind of like a strange old experience that happens overnight, literally overnight. As some of you will know, that baby comes and you didn't realize it was possible to love
Your priorities
in the way
just
that
changed.
you love that
Right.
child.
That's right.
And then the second child comes along, and all you're thinking through the pregnancy is, how on earth am I going to be able to give the love to this other child? You know, this child gets all the love, and then you realize that you can. But you become incredibly protective of them as babies, but wanting to see the world for them better than the way that you left it. And it's a moment in your life where you have this overwhelming feeling, and you can understand that, yeah. And sadly, for so many of us, it whittles away. If we could keep that moment and that feeling, and we could put it in a box, in a jar, and just keep it forevermore, and make sure that we remembered it, then I'm sure we could do a lot of good things.
And what's sad is, we take care of our own children, but we don't want to take care of ourselves or each other as if we were taking care of our children. And I think I don't have children, but I have your children, because the work I do is for all of us. I give myself to you and to your children and to the world. And I think it's a spiritual calling. It's not just a business proposition and an opportunity, it's also a spiritual.
Yeah.
And if you can orient yourself and really know why you're doing it, it's not just because it's a smart, novel thing that they're doing because they have a cutting edge in an industry that hasn't quite gotten there yet. Early adopters, congratulations. But it's also for the reason, it's for humanity.
Simon Sinek wrote a book called Find Your Why.
I know Simon.
And consumer-wise, business-wise, human-wise, we have to think that, and it's a principle in theory. When you speak about cost of something, what's it going to cost me to do something? That cost doesn't equal the real cost of it. So if you have a plastic bowl or a plastic bottle or whatever it is, that might cost something, but just in terms of how much you pay for it. But what is the rest of the world paying for it? What's the ocean paying for it? What are the animals paying for? How much does that go backwards and forwards in the future again? So you're talking about $1? No, it's not $1. There's many, many, many multiple dollars.
What's the name of that girl? Greta
Thunberg.
She made some very compelling statements, took some very compelling action, and created a movement, and in ways that we haven't seen for many years, and made us all stood up and just take notice a little bit. It was one of those, a little bit like the doctor that says to the smoker, one more cigarette and you're going to die. It's like she made us all just stop for a second and just gulp, and I just hope that her work can be carried forward and she can do even more as she grows up and becomes an adult. I mean, she'll be a force to be reckoned with for sure. She clearly found her why.
Yeah, she did.
Thank you so much for coming to join us on the show, Adrian. I appreciate
Thank you.
you coming to join us. Ladies and gentlemen, how cool is that? Movie stars and people changing the world, all on the Spencer Lodge podcast. We'll see you soon.